easing of restrictions, which of course all come in today. I'm joined by the National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, John Apter. Good to see you, John. Are you clear in terms of what the rules are that you are now going to have to police?
Good morning, Stephen. Which I know is not the most helpful of answers. But yes, we are reasonably clear. I think the frustrating thing for police officers who are out there on the front line trying to enforce this, if they need to educate the public, is that there's still an awful lot of confusion as to what people can do, and that's why I've been calling on both the Prime Minister and the leaders of the devolved governments to be absolutely crystal clear in their messaging to the public and to policing as to what's expected, because there's a difference between legislation and guidance. Guidance is not legally enforceable. People seem to think it is. But we are on the road to this easing of lockdown, which we all want. My concern is what happened last year was many people see this as, you know, the floodgates are open and they can do whatever they want, which is simply not the case.
Yet we had clarification from the Minister earlier this hour saying, you know, if we wanted to travel, as I would, for 300 miles up to the Lake District to visit my parents, as long as I stayed outside and didn't go in the house and followed those rules, you know, I am free to travel the length and breadth of the country now. I mean, were you aware of that?
Yeah, well, it was guidance because what was announced, or what's been announced today, is the government have said that you should stay at home, you should limit your travel, but that's not must, that's not legislation. And obviously within Wales it's slightly different, so if you cross the border you need to be aware of the legislation over there because it is slightly different. But yes, you can travel. And I think many people don't realise that. Now, this isn't the police saying what you can and can't do. This is the government. This is legislation. What my colleagues have to do is interpret that legislation, which is not always easy, and engage with the public to try and make their lives as positive as they can. But it's not always been easy, and certainly easing out of lockdown, as I've said, creates its own problems.
And it's the confrontation issue as well, isn't there? I mean, there's these situations now where there's the rule of 6 outside, or 2 families, which may exceed 6. I mean, that puts police officers in a very difficult position when they have to go and approach people to find out what on earth is actually going on.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, there are still members of the public who are making complaints to the police when they see large groups. And that will continue. And that's because people are still concerned. You know, there's still a deadly virus out there that we're all trying to play our part to minimise the impact. So if police officers see large groups out and about, then they could well engage with them and ask them, you know, if they're from 2 households. But it does get incredibly complicated, and it's also really intrusive because this is not the way that we want to police. This is what we're trying to do to keep everybody as safe as possible, but it's certainly not easy. And the vast majority of the public get that, and they support us and they work with us to try and make things as good as they can. But some people obviously will take advantage of the situation. That's what we've seen. I
mean, a lot of this, of course, is driven by the fact the vaccination programme has worked so incredibly well so far. I mean, 57% of the adult population have had their first dose now. Police officers have not been put on a sort of higher list, if you like. Does that, you may say it wasn't fair, but is anything that needs to be done now to try and get police officers vaccinated as soon as possible with this continued interaction with the public?
Absolutely, Stephen, and I'm putting pressure on government all the time to do the right thing. Look, what they're expecting police officers to do, go in and out of people's homes, to police large-scale events, to sadly deal with the deaths in people's homes, people who've died from COVID and other conditions. There's a risk there. And whilst the risk of death or serious illness for my colleagues might be reduced because of age, then they can then become super spreaders themselves, and nobody wants that. So I'm still calling on the government to do the right thing, prioritise my colleagues. We've got some large-scale events coming up in the coming months where hundreds, if not thousands, of police officers will be deployed around the country, and yet none of them are being prioritised for the vaccine. I just think it's a real betrayal by the government.
John, we've got to leave it there, but good to talk to you. Thank you. This is Sky News Breakfast. Let's get a check on the weather for you now with Naz.